I'm Gary Venner, CEO of IFA Acquisitions, and I'm joined by Glynn Mummery, insolvency practitioner and partner of national business advisory firm FRP Advisory, where we continue our informative question and answer series on our YouTube channel to provide top tips when selling an IFA business and an insight into market conditions faced by company owners that are looking to exit and liquidate. The title of this video is coming up on our screen now.
So Gary, as we've discussed previously, my involvement has always come towards the end when a company is at that point when it can be liquidated and the owners have sold their business. But the selling of the business and that decision is a pretty big decision. In your experience, what sort of factors lead to a business owner deciding now is the time to sell?
Sure, and Glynn, we're the opposite, I suppose. People do come to us at the very beginning of their journey, and the typical that we see factor would probably be age, and that probably is because in the financial services industry, literally the average age of an advisor is around 57, and we know that over a third of those advisors are coming up to retirement age or at retirement age now. So that's obviously a big factor of why a lot of people are coming to us. We're finding that health issues are also an increasing factor as well, and that may be the vendor themselves or a partner, or family member, sometimes even parents, that they need to devote time now instead of parents going into a home perhaps so they can look after them, etc. So those are all sort of factors. We occasionally get the individual that actually wants to do something completely different, maybe reaching 50 years of age, let's say, and deciding, well, I want to put the next 10, 15 years doing something different. So that happens. And then of course, lastly, I'd say with larger firms do have a plan to build and grow through acquisition once they reach a certain target, and of course having the enjoyment of the economies of scale, maybe even bringing in their own in-house discretionary management as well. The value of their business can increase considerably from when they're buying businesses to when they come to sell. So all of those are typical sort of factors that we see on a day-to-day basis.
That's hugely interesting, and there's two things I'm going to pick up on that really interest me. The first one is age, which I think from what you said is the most common factor. And that always makes me think about succession planning. It's something that we see a lot in our industry. Business owners trying to exit and perhaps having not thought about succession properly, and actually therefore certain doors are closed to them. How is succession planning within FCA regulated businesses?
Yeah, I would say it's fairly low, in terms of the percentage of businesses that have succession plans in place, that natural succession plan, whether that be their own children coming through to take on the business. We don't see a huge amount of that, nor having advisors within the business that are looking to take it over. We do sometimes, and we do get involved as a broker service to help management buyouts as well. So that happens. But I would say well over 80% of all of our inquiries don't have any succession plan in place. What also interests me is sometimes it always surprises me how many advisors don't really have succession planning for their own clients. We will typically ask to have a client list with names redacted, but it gives us a flavour of the individual, their ages, their location, the funds under management by product provider and type, and particularly that age of client. We often will ask, tell us a little bit about the succession planning for that client. Do you have the next generation down? And again, it always surprises how few actually do have that intergenerational arrangements in place.
I find it quite surprising that this is such a factor almost within all industries. It's talked about a huge amount, certainly with our own profession, but it always seems to be an issue that crops up. The second thing that I found very interesting in what you were saying is in those larger practices that are perhaps on acquisition mode or looking to sell, or indeed people that do start businesses with that view in mind. Is there any certain milestones that you think that they need to hit before they can start actively marketing their practices with a view to selling?
Yeah, sure. My first milestone, I would say, is make sure that the business owner has built really strong relationships, because an acquisition really works well when the vendor has that strong relationship with their clients. Their clients have trusted them for years over their investment recommendations. When it comes to actually selling their business, they're likely to listen to the vendor. Why have they chosen? Give good reasons for their reasons why, for their due diligence and why they've chosen that particular firm. So if they're not at a stage where those strong relationships have been built, I would say make sure that they're in place first. Secondly, it's always going to be easier if the client files are stored electronically, and particularly using good CRM data capture, as well as just having a document store, but actually having that information that we could pull off valuations at any time, etc. So maybe investing in that. If somebody was thinking of selling their business in 2-3 years' time, there should be plenty of time to put that into place, and I would say that would really, really work well. Lastly, there will be some advisors out there that do their own stock picking and run their own investment committee. Just think about when you come to sell, how easy it will be for those transferable for those client investments. We often find, if a business can't afford, or it's not right to have their own discretionary powers, maybe they've considered outsourcing in their investment proposition using model portfolio, etc. So that can be really useful as well. So I think it's just prepping the business ready for that easy transition to an acquirer.
That's the milestone part. When people are looking to sell their businesses and they begin that journey, from they make the decision and they have to prepare the business, I guess, as much as anything. Is there any particular major hurdles that you see that are quite common that they can almost pre-plan to reduce the impact?
I guess time. It is really difficult to sometimes collect that information and be ready, because it's business as usual as well. There's still client reviews need to happen, and almost every IFA that I ever speak to are busier than they've ever been. So it's just fitting that in. And again, I suppose, putting clients onto a CRM, and particularly a well-known one, maybe whether it's Intelligent Office or Xplan, etc., that will help the vendor when it comes to sell. It's a lot easier to pull off reports at that stage. So I think that will be one of the hurdles. The other hurdle is often that somebody doesn't know who to turn to. You've never been through this process. You only come to sell your business once. So it's just the lack of knowledge of what needs to happen in the process. But I would say, don't worry, if you're using a good broker like ourselves, they would point you in the right direction and make sure that that's happening. We talk to vendors 2-3 years before they're ready to sell, and I would say that's a good position to be in as well.
I like that point you made about when you only sell your business once, and with that in mind, and trying to imagine myself as the business owner of a practice, thinking I'm going to be selling. The question certainly at the forefront of my mind will be, how much am I going to get for it? What is the value? Do people come to you with a preconceived idea of the value? Is there a mechanism that is pretty well set that you can give some quite clear indication of what value they can hope to achieve?
Yeah, well, I'd answer that and say some do and some don't have a preconceived idea. Some have no idea what their business is worth because they're not sure that their business are going to achieve the sort of prices they've heard. They're not sure what any buyer is looking for, and others will have heard of what the typical values are. They may not be as up to date. We tend to sort of say that the value of a business is typically 3 to 4 times for a 1-2 advisor firm, but beyond there we might be looking at EBITDA multiples as well, because then if we're looking at an acquirer taking on the staff, the advisors, it's more interested in the profitability at that point as well, so we need to look at that. But at the end of the day, some will have a preconceived idea that theirs must be worth what they've heard as being the top multiple, and it's without realizing that how do we get to that top multiple, which is typically factors such as age of clients. What is the longevity expectation here of that client staying on the books, and the next part will potentially be the average holdings per household. Very important, because often it's not too dissimilar of work that's involved in fact finding and analysing and doing research, etc. Obviously more complex needs around that high net worth, ultra high net worth. But from an acquirer's point of view, they're going to pay more if it's a higher average holdings per household. So these factors, we look at risk, we look at type of advice given, we will also look at where the clients are typically invested through as well. So for instance, there is going to be a higher multiple typically for platform-based investments compared to bonds. And also, again, it's just that sort of how easy will it be to transition to an acquirer. So it's the sort of thing that once we have a vendor talk to us and provide us with all the information about their business, we can pretty much make sure they're on the right lines in terms of the valuation range that we think that they could typically achieve.
A spin-off from one of the points you just made there, you talked about the households within the portfolio and other elements that go to increasing the value of the business for the vendor. Is there anything that can appear within a practice that would push the value down? That potential, if you're looking to potentially sell your business, you could think of in advance and minimise?
I think it's where investments are invested, how they're invested, can typically push that down. Also, being careful not to, let's say, get into a higher risk area of advice. I'll give you an example of that, where somebody has done 1, 2, 3, maybe defined benefit pension transfers, because their clients had, they suited, they haven't really got a problem with the advice, but it may be that they've lost cover on those investments, or it may be that from another acquirer, they just don't want to take that risk. So was it worth it? Potentially, because the premiums on PI will shoot up if you get into that advice, and how much was actually fee driven from doing that advice in the first place. So I would just be careful about the type of advice you do. Vanilla is good actually when it comes to selling businesses. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, definitely. Vanilla is good.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and switch on post notifications so that you won't miss our next video in this series when we discuss market conditions faced by company owners that are looking to exit and liquidate, and an insight into M&A situations by 2 industry experts, me, Gary Venner, CEO of one of the UK's largest specialist brokers in IFA acquisitions, and Glynn Mummery, insolvency practitioner and partner of national business advisory firm FRP Advisory, who are a leading national business advisory firm.